I realized something. The Lord spoke to me. He says, the way I act when I lose is who I'll see around when I win. You know, the way I act when I fail will determine who will be around me when I win. You know, sometimes we allow our character and allow adversity to come to the face of us where we say and we lash out on the people that God has given us, and then when you're finally on top of the mountain, you're alone. That's been the life of people in today's church, is that the way I act when I lose, I destroy every bridge when I win. I love, and so I had to come to the face of that. And instead of me lashing out on the team, I started edifying them. I was like, you know what, we could have done better here, but it was all of us, right? But in my mind, I'm saying something else, right? I'm like, oh. But that's been the life of the church, is that, you know, I care for the other person more than winning. You know, I care for the other person more than winning. I'd rather have my relationship with you more than me feeling like I'm on the top. And that's hard, because today's people in today's world, it says if you're not on top, then you're around nobody. You forget everybody's feelings, forget everything, because they're not going to be the ones to get you there. But Jesus Christ never worked that way. He always worked with the team concept. Team concept, right? You know, we're coming into 2024, and there's different things that we could think about, and different things that we could think about in our past. I said, maybe I could have made some changes. Maybe I could have done some things. But I want to question you. How have you acted in the face of adversity? When adversity comes, the last time I preached, we talked about pressure and how pressure is not the enemy, but a gift. But sometimes we allow pressure to change our attitude and to change our ways of being. And then at the end of it, you say, well, this is not really who I am. Oh, come on. If you're married, you know that when you're in a fight and you come and apologize, it's like, that's just not me. But you showed that. And people don't think this, is that what you show, you might forget, but everyone around you will remember. How have you acted lately? How have you shown yourself to be? And this reminds me of the story about Jonah. It's a good story that they teach the children, but many people don't see the revelation out of it. And we could go to Jonah 1:2. I love this because Jonah's in a position where God is calling him. And he's calling him to go to Nineveh. And because he's going to Nineveh, he has a hard time going to Nineveh. Why? If you know that Nineveh was the enemy of Israel. And so God says, you're going to go to Nineveh, and you need to tell them that they need to return from their ways. And he says, no, I'm leaving to Tarshish, right? If the next verse, right? It says, I'm leaving to Tarshish. I'm going to leave, which was a part of Israel. He says, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to escape to the sea, and I'm going to avoid what God has been telling me. The reason why he did not want to go, many people say that he was fearful of that maybe God won't use him the way he thinks. Or maybe he's just scared because of what he might get back. But when you really look into the story, Jonah hated Nineveh and the people in it. He hated Nineveh. He hated the people. Why? Because they were the enemy. And God is calling him, saying, you need to go to enemy territory and tell them to turn from their ways. That's like saying this, like, your biggest hater, I want you to go to their house and have a dinner with them. Oh, no, you got me messed up. I'm not doing that. No, I'll rather die, and I'd rather go into somewhere else than to be in my enemy's house. And this is the same thing that God is telling him. He's saying, you're going to be called to do that, but he escapes. And then I love this because in verse 10, which I'm kind of saving the time, right? In verse 10, he's on a boat. He ends up on a boat with some sailors, and a storm comes, crazy storm. And the storm comes, and he goes to the bottom of the boat to sleep. You know, many people, when their trials come, they enter into a depression where they just want to sleep. I don't know if you've ever been there. But I remember when I was there at one time in my life, all you want to do is escape from reality. And you want to sleep. You want to just, you don't feel the same. You don't walk the same. And this is Jonah's position. He knew he ran from the call of God. And so he goes to the bottom of the boat to sleep. And the ones that are facing it were the people around him, the sailors. And they're saying, what is going on? Why is God mad at us? And they come to Jonah and he goes, it's my fault. It's my fault. I want you to think about something. There's many times where we can face adversity and we can come to a place where we want to ignore adversity like it's not going to come around again. People don't know how to stand up to adversity, and this is why their families being destroyed every single day. Marriage is being destroyed. Children are hating their parents in today's generation. Marriages are no longer giving second chances no more. There's all kinds of adversity coming to us, but we come to a position where we're no longer facing adversity, but adversity becomes our character. Adversity becomes our character. I don't know if you've ever known somebody, but you know when someone's going through something. I don't know if you've ever known someone like that where you know when they're mad. They ignore everybody. They're by themselves. They just don't want to talk to nobody, and they're really probably isolated in their room. If that's probably some of your children, right? And you told them to take out the trash, and then no, I'm not, and then this big old scene, right? And people lash out because of adversity faced them, not knowing that adversity is just a voice. Adversity is the voice to condemn people so they can turn away from their Father. People do not know how to face adversity in today's generation because they are so scared on what the results might be. I don't want to get married because of what my parents were. I don't want to face the things that God has called me to do because adversity is in my face. I saw my mother fail, I saw my father fail, and I hate it. So I don't want to become that. This is why many people that have fathers that failed them, they say, I don't want to ever become him. Why? Because adversity is at your door and people don't know how to face it. And Jonah's in this position, and it's in verse 10, then the man exceedingly afraid and said to him, why have you done this? For the men knew that he fled from the presence of the Lord because he had told them. He says, I left God. This is where people are saying, you know what, I'm no longer in this position. And have you ever noticed that when people leave God, they are always in a depression, they're always in trials, and they always end up in a crazy boat? Read the words behind the words. They're always in a crazy storm of their life, and they always come back back at the same spot. Next verse, it says like this. Then he said to him, what shall we do till the sea may be calm for us? For the sea was growing more tremendous. Next verse. And he said to them, pick me up and throw me into the sea. And then the sea will calm for you, for I know that the great tempest is because of me. This is a sign of Jonah saying, throw me over for your sake so you can be saved. Sounds familiar, right? There was a man named Jesus that died on the cross so he can save the children of God. And Jonah says, throw me over because I know this storm is because of me. And God prepares a fish to swallow him, as we know. And he stays there for 3 days and 3 nights. That's what I believe verse 17 says. And he stays there for three days and 3 nights. And you know what's awesome? Is that it had to take a fish to swallow him so he can recognize, hey, I'm in the wrong. It has to take a whole desert and a whole storm and a whole trial and a whole tribulation. We have to be on the edge of divorce so I can start appreciating my wife or husband. I have to be on the edge of where I feel like I'm gonna fall over so I can start appreciating everything that God has given me. Why does it always take a trial so people can run to God? God, if you heal this person, I'll serve you forever. God, if you restore my marriage, I'll give you my whole life. When God is saying, why couldn't you do that before the trial? And that is what positions and people are today, is that they depend on a trial so they can turn to their Father. But when the trial's over, then we start turning away from the same thing that saved you. Why is this? Because it's a church pandemic. A pandemic within the church. I'll turn to my Father when I need you, but when I don't need you, then when I go through it again, I'll turn to you again. And we use God as the fifth avenue of just in case I'm in this position, then I got you. Why does it always take that? And Jonah's in this position where he had to take a whole whale to swallow him, to be thrown over the sea. He had to take a whole storm so he can recognize, hey, I need God. This is people in ministry. This is people in leadership, is that they've been leading in leadership out of the whale. They've been stuck in this trap and they feel trapped and they feel like nothing is going their way, and they start serving in leadership. They start serving God as if this is my last hope. And it starts becoming a program instead of a freedom. I am programmed to serve God. I am not free to serve God. I am programmed to come to church because it feels right, not because it's a value in my life. I am programmed to be a husband. I am programmed to be a wife because I don't want to go through it because I know what she's going to say. I got married, that's why. I got married, so I am programmed to love my wife. I am programmed to love my husband. I am programmed to lead my children, even though I wanted to give up on them many times. And it becomes a program where no longer you're singing out of the Spirit of God, but you're singing out of your talents. No longer you are greeting because you have a good smile, but you're greeting because you're just there because they told you. We don't need teachers that are gonna teach our children. We need Spirit-led leaders to teach our children for today's future. Many people are moved, and many children are moved. We put our children in positions where they receive anything. That's what children do, is receive whatever is given. And so we don't need people, but today's generation needs leaders. They need leaders to rise up for their family. They need fathers to step in. They need mothers to stand up for their family. We don't need people to just be a body, but we need leaders and grace-based leaders. You know what a grace-based leader is? Even though I know you did me wrong, I'm gonna grace you. Even though I know that I failed in that position, I don't give up on the first time. When you worship, there's a difference between someone saying, wow, she's a good singer, and someone saying, wow, he's a good father. What's the difference? That one leads out of talent and one leads to the Father. We don't need people to be good preachers where he says, oh, he's a good preacher. But we need people that say, wow, he's a good father. Every position that you are in, it should always lead to the Father. But why have the church lost that? And why have people lost that? Why did Jonah lose this? Because we're in the trial. We lose the freedom to serve God. We lose the freedom to just turn to him in adversity, because adversity has shaped my attitude. When I see adversity, I see it as another opportunity to show off my Father. And that's how we have to see it. That when adversity is in my face, I got another opportunity to show off how good my God is. That's what adversity is for, and that's what he has prepared you for. He says, I know this life is going to give you adversity. I know this life is going to give you pressures, but it's not for you to fold. It's not for you to start giving up, but start recognizing who your Father is. And what does this take is for people to start aligning themselves back to their Father. People have aligned themselves to ministry. People have aligned themselves to the people around them. And this is why you're always failing, because ministry is not your savior. The people are not your savior. They did not die on the cross for you, but Jesus died on the cross. And so when we do ministry, it's out of what he's done. Why is this important? I love how Pastor Mike was talking about it last week, about serving in ministry and serving Christ. Because this is the year of the open door. But that's all it is. That doesn't mean you have to walk through it. It's an open door, an open opportunity for you to receive Jubilee, to receive the greatness of whatever you want to receive in life. But the biggest enemy to you will be adversity. What is adversity? What does adversity look like? It looks like a negative person. You want to know what, if you go in the dictionary and you look the word negative, it'll probably show you. And you take that for yourself. Because that's how we've been feeling. Man, I'm always negative towards everything. And adversity has shaped my character so where no one wants to be around me no more. I don't want to serve God because of how things were done. I don't feel the need to serve God no more. And this is what they'll say. This is the excuse. I just need to work on my family. So you're saying that God will put you in ministry and not work on your family? God takes care of you. God takes care of his children. And God will always look out for your best interest. But Jonah's in the position where he has stayed there for 3 days and 3 nights. And he prays in the fish. And when he prays, it says that he cried out because of his affliction. You cry out because of your afflictions. And then it says God spoke to the fish to spit them out on dry land. God spoke to the fish. How is it that a fish can be more obedient than God's people? Why? Because they do not resist. The feeling of resisting. People will resist the voice of God when a fish can be more obedient because it doesn't resist. How many times have we resisted when God spoke? Mend with your wife. Mend with your family. But we resist because you always feel like you're in the right. And Jonah's in this position, right? But I love this because in Jonah 3:1, it talks about Jonah getting called a second time. Say a second time. And God tells them the same thing. Go to Nineveh and tell them to turn from their ways. And so it took that whole trial just to end up at the same spot. That's frustrating. That's frustrating that you can do ministry for so many years and still feel stuck. It's frustrating how you can serve God all these years, but you still don't know how to live them out. It's frustrating. And people enter a state of frustration because they move out of their work, not out of their freedom. This is going to be the number one killer to churches today, to the body of Christ today, is that you will lose sight of your Father instead of regaining his freedom, regaining your freedom back. But how do you do this? And it says the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time saying, next verse. Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and preach it to the message that I tell you. Next verse. And Jonah arose and went to Nineveh. Of course he did. You had to go through a fish, right? According to the word of the Lord, now Nineveh was exceedingly great city, a 3-day journey in extent. And Jonah began to enter the city on the first day, and he cried out and said, yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. He goes into this position and he preaches to Nineveh. And because he preaches to Nineveh, he says, in 40 days it's going to be overthrown. And you know what happens? Is that the people started awakening and their eyes awakened, and they said they started believing. And because they started believing, he says that everything that was supposed to happen no longer happened because they started believing and God had favor on them. And so Jonah gets mad and leaves the city to go sit outside because he was hoping that God would destroy the city. Maybe, I'm gonna stand outside just in case. And he said he saw their works. You know why this is important? Because they did not have a savior, so they needed their works to get them right. They needed their works to get them right. They needed their works. And he said he saw their works and turned and changed the outcome. This is important because he saw their works. But notice the message that was preached is that in 40 days, it will be overthrown. Jonah was preaching a message of the law, so he had to take their works to get them right. And he leaves the city mad at God, and he says, I'd rather die than to see them saved. I love this because he goes outside the city and God plants a tree for shade. And you know what's messed up? Is that night he plants a worm to destroy the tree. And he says, but the Lord said, you have pity on the plant for which you have not labored, nor made it grow, which came up in the night and perished in the night. You have more pity on a plant that you did not labor for than the people of Nineveh. Why do you have more pity and focus your attention more on the things that you did not labor for? You didn't labor for salvation. You didn't labor for the opportunity to be saved and to go to heaven. You didn't labor for that. And you didn't advance it to grow. Your Father did. And because he did it for you, he says, why do you have more pity on the plant than you have the people? And next verse, it says like this. And should I not pity Nineveh, the great city in which are more than 120,000 persons who cannot discern between their right hand and their left? He says, why should I not pity them? And this is an illustration. He's saying, not because they just said, I don't know which one's which, but he's saying this is how illiterate they are. They don't know the word, and they're just getting saved. He says, why should I not pity? I'm here to tell you something. Your attitude will determine who's going to be around you or who's not, and who you have pity on. But this is a grace-based leader. He says, why should I not pity them? They have done all kinds of evil. They were the enemy to God's people. And yet he had more pity than Jonah. Why is it that it takes people to face adversity and to face certain things so they can start recognizing, oh, maybe I should forgive? Why should I forgive my wife? She didn't do nothing right. Why should I forgive my husband? He has a drinking problem. Why should I do this? Why should I do that? And God is saying, I have more pity on them than you have your own family. In Matthew 12:40, it says, Jonah stood 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. You know why this is powerful? Because this is before the cross. And he's saying Jonah stood 3 days and 3 nights, just the way Jesus will stay 3 days and 3 nights and arise again. For the people and for the salvation, for Jonah said the sailors, but for the salvation of the children. This is important today because if you do not recognize the goodness of your Father, then you will always serve out of a program. You will always serve out of your attitude. You will always serve because of what people did to you instead of being graceful and saying, you know what, even when you did me wrong, I'm still gonna forgive. That is what leadership is. Letting down your feelings for the sake of the person because I don't want to quit on our relationship. I care for you too much. Many people will die for their wife but don't want to forgive from her. People will want to die for their children. I'll take a bullet for them. You'll rather shed blood than to forgive them. And why is that? You got it all twisted. You got it all twisted. This is the life that people live today. I'll live a life of unforgiveness, and I'll put my leadership aside so I can prove a point. 2024, I'm here to tell you something. If people do not change their ways and change the ways that they think, and metanoia, there's gonna be another year of frustration, another year of temptation, more marriages will get divorced, more families will fall apart, more children will enter foster care, more people will enter into a place of adversity because they don't wanna forgive, because they don't wanna rise up as a grace-based leader for their family, for their ministry, for their church. But this is why, because people do not wanna be a grace-based leader because it takes too much work for them. It takes too much work to forgive. It takes too much out of me to let down my pride. I'm gonna tell you something, and this is where you find Jesus. Jonah was in Jonah 1:17, Jonah was in the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Matthew 12:40, Jesus was in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. Jonah laid down his life for the sailors, the same way that Jesus laid down for his life for his children. Jonah survived living in a fish. And Jesus rose on the 3rd day because death could not hold them. Death could not hold him. And when death could not hold him, I'm telling you something here today, that your Jesus lived on the 3rd day, that he died on the cross so you can rise up as a leader for your family, so you can rise up and align yourself back to the Father. You are no longer in the face of adversity, but you are in the face of a good Father that can get you out of any adversity, that can get you out of any trial and any tribulation, because that's how good he is. He was good while he was on the cross, and he was good when he rose up. He was good. And you know why it was the heart of the earth? Because he had to stay in the heart of the earth so the Holy Spirit can be in your heart, the heart of a man. He had to stay in the heart of the earth so you can have the opportunity to have the Holy Spirit. Has adversity hurt you lately? Where you felt like quitting? Has business got too hard? Has being a husband got too hard? Or being a wife? Has living this life got too hard? I'm here to tell you something here today. There is nothing too hard for God. There is nothing too hard for God. If the world can put you in it, he can get you out of it.